This week at Coffee and Tools, we're doing 3D printing again, but I want to show, I guess we'll call it, how to level the bed on a CR10, because it sounds really easy, it looks really easy, but there are some things that can really screw you up. So I thought, well, we should really cover that crazy topic today. I don't really see anything out there that is helpful, so I want to show how things can go wrong or sideways. Kind of like Bender. Cell phone, again? Jesus. Keep that out of here. Let's go to the 3D printer. To make this shot this week, I decided I was going to try to get it on the tripod so I wouldn't have a wobbly camera. I pulled this tripod out because I got it at a local junk store, and of course this piece here was missing. But it just so happens I own a 3D printer, so what do? You make one. So I made one for the, there we go, for the camera. And there, so now we have the piece that we didn't have when we bought this thing. But that's just a great example of things that happen around here with a 3D. Awesome machine. What's it take to level the bed on a CR10? Well, it takes a little bit of work, but once you get your bed leveled, the CR10 can be a pretty awesome machine. And this bed, for example, right here, hasn't been adjusted for over a year. Huh, that's pretty funny right there. It hasn't been adjusted for over a year. And just cranked it up, and this is like the third or fourth print since it's been sitting for over a year. And as you can see, it's doing a perfectly nice job of putting down that first layer, the outside line of something I just drew up. And I just drew this up to make something for my tripod so that I'm not wiggling with this camera right now. But so applications, fabulous. So really this week the topic is really, you know, how to level the bed and make it work for you. Yeah. Welcome back. The main thing that most of the CR10 gang do is they like to put the plate up in here with whatever you're going to be printing on. In this case, I've got a mirror, and what a lot of people will do is use a piece of paper and try to catch underneath the nozzle here, and by catching the nozzle with the paper they can gauge it that it's reasonably tight. I tried this over and over again and I really couldn't get it to work for me. Now the problem was sort of twofold. One of the things I was doing was moving this over manually this way, which is fine. I mean, yeah, you know, if you want to check the center of the bed or out on these corners or something, that's fine. But what happened was I was turning this back and forth like this, up and down, and I would lower it until I could catch the paper with it. There's a couple of mistakes here. So let's see if I'll take a look at the first one underneath. And if you look closely, I'll lift the paper up, you can see there's some plastic still hanging out from the past print. And what happens is that plastic is actually going to catch this paper and make me think that I've got the right, you know, amount of clearance between the nozzle and the bed. So that's a mistake. The other thing too was when I first set up is I rotated this all the way down and bottomed it out, and then I would set it. Well, the gap would actually be huge, and when I went to start it up, what I failed to realize was when this comes down, it actually hits a stop switch here, and that electrical stop switch will stop it sooner than when the mechanical end of the screw runs it all the way down. So in other words, if I do this manually, I can take this down to where it hits the plate, but that's not the right setting. This electrical switch here that stops this from coming down is actually going to be where the setting actually needs to be. And that's where you need to level the bed to the nozzle. So the first thing you should do is probably clean the nozzle so you don't have any plastic like that hanging off. But also, don't use the mechanical screw like this to adjust this up and down. Set the machine so that this comes down and hits that limit switch, which is right there. And wherever that stops electrically, that is precisely where it's going to be stopping at all times when it's at the bottom, when it starts up the print for that first layer. So what happens is, rather than use the paper, I started actually having it electrically come down, hit the switch, and then I would check the gap using a feeler gauge instead of a piece of paper. Now the paper's fine, it will work, but you've got to have the paper where it sort of catches and drags a little bit. If it doesn't drag, you've got too much clearance going on. So you have to get very precise. And the other problem is, I don't know what gauge of paper I have. Okay, for example, I'll just give you an example. This is, I like heavy 24-pound paper. This is a little bit thicker than your stock paper. So again, this is not going to really give me the accurate reading that I'm looking for. I want a very thin piece of paper to put under there to catch the nozzle a little bit and drag. If it drags really good, actually, without tearing the paper, you're probably right about in the area where you want to be. Now, the reason I'm showing you all this is because, yeah, these are things that went wrong when I first tried to set up my CR10 printer. Because it's not that hard, but it gets hard when you do things like what I did mechanically and not realizing that the electrical switch is going to stop it sooner than the mechanical end of the shaft. So, yeah, that's what happens. So that was a couple of tricks and tips, whatever. Now, I can't say it for everybody because I've seen a lot of different comebacks on this, but this printer this bed has not been adjusted for over a year, and I just made that print today for the tripod that I just showed you, and it was perfect. I mean, I turned it on, set it, walked away. It went ahead and made the print. And this is just a piece of mirror. I do clean my mirror with just a nice dry rag and rub it really good before I fire it up. I also make sure I don't put too much pressure or push. One of the worst things you can do is when you get a plastic part and it's really hard, is start picking on it and pushing down on this. That will probably throw your settings off. I've been very careful not to do that. And like I say, this has lasted me over a year. It's been a year and 3 or 4 months now, and I have not had to adjust the bed at all. So hey, coffee and tools and 3D printing.